Hello ladies and gentlemen, once again this is Jeremy Smith. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Nikon D5500 compared to the Nikon D5300. Now before I even get into this video, I'm going to tell you right now that there is an extremely teensy tiny difference between both of these cameras. There is not going to be anything to speak about in terms of image quality differences. I may actually still go ahead and give you guys some samples, at some of the higher ISO settings, but just know there's a tiny difference. Both these cameras use the same 24 megapixel sensor that does not have an optical low pass filter, as far as I can tell. I mean, they've got the exact same specs. And they both use Nikon's Xpeed 4 processor, so no change there. It seems that the slight differences that the 5500 has in terms of its picture quality is just because it's a newer camera and they've had time to tweak things a bit further. So yeah, don't even concern yourself about the image quality. Both these cameras have lots of other things in common too. They're both made using the same carbon reinforced plastic material, so they're both already smaller and lighter. However, on the D5500, they did manage to get it a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter. Of course, we'll look at the size difference in a moment. But weight difference wise, we're looking at about 470 grams on the D5500 versus about 530 on the D5300. So a little bit of a difference there. And let's see here, anything else worth speaking about? They both come with the 18-55 VR2 lens or the 18-140. The cost difference between the cameras right now, at least here in the US, is basically about $100. On the D5300, you start out at a price of about $650 for the body, $750 for the kit with the 18-55 VR2, and then $950 for the 18-140 VR lens. On the 5500, it's going for about $750 for the body only, $850 with the 18-55 VR2, and $1,050 for the 18-140. So about $100 difference. Now, whether or not that $100 is going to be, a big deal to you, it's not a huge difference in cost. I would expect that as time goes on, the D5300 will come down and cost a lot more. At this point in time, I say you may as well go for the 5500. I mean, there's not really a huge difference in cost right now. And let's see, they're both 5 frames a second. They both have the same exact ISO range, 100 to 25,600. They both can do 1080p video at up to 60 frames a second. They both have a touchscreen. Sorry, they both have a moving screen. The 5500 adds the touchscreen. Now, in terms of built-in features, they both have Wi-Fi built in. The 5300 has Wi-Fi and GPS. As I mentioned in the 5500 review, having GPS in the 5300 is not a big deal at all. Most people don't use it, and it does consume a lot of extra battery life. So it definitely made sense to me to go ahead and remove that feature from the 5500 so that way they can make the camera body a little smaller, perhaps save a little bit of energy as well. Let's see, speaking of saving energy, the battery life on the D5500 is noticeably better. It's rated at about 820 shots versus the 600 shots of the D5300, so that's definitely a significant improvement as well. Okay, so that's pretty much where we have our main differences, battery life, size. We have a touchscreen on the 5500. One other thing that I didn't really realize about the 5500 until recently is that the 5500 has the same flat picture control that a lot of Nikon's other new cameras like the D810 and D750 have. And I'll go ahead and show you what that's all about here in a moment. But aside from that, that's the main things that are different in the specs. I'll go ahead and show you guys both these cameras close up so you can kind of see how the size compares and everything. Now, I'm not going to go through all the menus and things like that like I do in the camera review videos. I'm just going to kind of hit the high points and differences. If you guys want to see more different or more information about both these cameras' menu system and other features and things along those lines, take a look at my D5500 review video or my D5300 review video, and I'll probably just toss a link up at this point so you guys can check that out. For now though, let's go ahead and take a closer look at both these cameras and see what's different. Okay, so taking a look at both cameras here, you'll notice that I have a 18-140 lens mounted on the D5500. I didn't have an 18-55 VR2 lying around, so I opted to put a 50mm 1.4 on the D5300. But both cameras are very, very small. If we take a look at the 5500, take a look down here. You guys probably remember this if you saw my 5500 video. But yeah, this camera got an all-new grip. So you can see it's very, very thin. It's basically like a mini Nikon D750. It's everything I thought the D7200 would be as well, but I'm not going to even bring that up again. So yeah, you can see nice grip there. And of course you guys can't feel the difference in weight, but trust me, it's not enough to be a really, really huge deal for most people, but it's definitely something that you can tell when you pick up the cameras. I mean, you can feel that the 5500 is lighter. So outside of going to like a mirrorless camera or something, this is small and as light as it gets. At least with this feature set. So you can see how that works. So very, very similar there. On to some things that I'm not as keen about on the 5500. Or not as keen on, I should say. If you look at the 5500 here, all the buttons have mysteriously gotten very, very small. I'm not really sure what's up with that. You can see that, especially these zoom in and zoom out buttons down here. Now the playback and second info button are not as bad. They're still fairly spaced out. But down here, this little cluster, down with our zoom in and zoom out buttons and our delete button, it's a very, very tiny little area there. So if we look at something like the 5300, you can see how the buttons were much more spaced out. There was just a lot more room to work with. I'm not really sure why. These buttons had to get so tiny and fiddly all of a sudden. So that's kind of a downside. Not a huge deal. You'll see that right up here we have our center for our viewfinder. Now this is something else that we have on the 5500 that we did on the 53. Yeah, basically you can turn it on, and whenever you raise it up to your eye, it turns off the LCD and such. The other thing that's different is that we do have that new flat picture control. Oh, actually, before I show you guys that, this is something that I personally like. A lot of users I find don't like this, but you'll notice how on the top of the camera here, we have, of course, our more manual settings over here, our manual and aperture priority and so forth. And then we have our effects menu, our auto menu, and our flash off. And actually, that was saying this is effects. But anyways, we have everything all divided up that way. On a camera like the 5300, you'll notice that it still has basically the same layout, but they actually put a lot of the very, very common scene modes straight on the dial. You know, like our action mode and landscape and so forth. Now, I like having the mode dial look very, very clean. And of course, on Nikon, the way this works is whenever you go over to your scene mode selection, you just go to one mode there. And then what you do is you rotate your back command dial here. And that allows you to change between all your modes. Some people don't like this, so I thought I would point it out. I personally happen to like it. I'd be curious to know what everyone else thinks as well. You can write me in the comments, but yeah, anyway. So that is a little bit of a difference. Going back to, spin the camera around the right way here. Going back to what I was initially going to show you though, the flat picture control is something that we do have on this camera. So basically, it's primarily aimed at those that are shooting video. So as you can see here, you can go between all your different picture controls like this. But if you're shooting video and you want to be able to do some editing to it, then you can set your camera to this flat mode, and basically it gives you the maximum amount of dynamic range, and you can go in and you can edit your video and adjust your contrast and things like that, and have a much more neutral starting point. So I thought it was interesting that they put that on the camera at this level, though, because this is something that, mostly people that are, doing a lot of more advanced video are going to do. But as I said before, it's just another way that this segment of camera is kind of growing up. That higher entry-level DSLR camera has started to have a lot more features. This is something that we especially see on cameras like the Rebel T6S, which we're also going to be comparing the D5500 to very soon. Unfortunately, Canon had some issues with those, and they all got pulled off the shelves. So I have to wait until all that's sorted out, and whenever I get more of those cameras in my hands, I feel like a comparison between the 5500 and the T6S is definitely in order. If you guys have any questions about these two cameras, just write me in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, this is Jeremy Smith, signing off.